Republicans coming in hot, going after Joe Biden. They can sense fear in the White House. There's a lot of talk about a cover-up. They know that there are probably more documents floating around out there. The Republicans are now in control of a bunch of House committees, including the Intelligence Committee, including the Oversight Committee, and Republicans are ready to go. We start today with Ted Cruz, as well as some other Republicans, including Comer, Stefanik, before we turn our attention to the White House, see what they have to say to explain this away. Before we hear from the president, who actually gave a speech today, we'll check in to see if he had a document update for us. But Ted Cruz, very unhappy with what he has seen from President Biden, who previous to this day was Vice President Biden. Before that, Senator Biden, which guess what? That's what Ted Cruz is. He's been a senator for a long time, just like Joe Biden was. And Ted Cruz explains to us exactly how the skiff works and how it's so amazing that Joe Biden happened to have these documents with him.
He has given no explanation as to how he has documents from his time in the Senate. Listen, I've served in the Senate for 10 years. I have read a lot of classified documents. 100% of the classified documents I have read have been in the skiff in the basement of the Capitol, the secure facilities. You go in there, you give them your phone, you give them your AirPods, you give them your Fitbit, you give all electronics, you sit behind giant steel doors and concrete, you read the documents there, you sign them out, you read them there, and then you sign them back in. In my entire time in the Senate, I have never read a classified document anywhere other than in the skiff. There are enormous questions what the heck Joe Biden was doing with classified documents at his house from his Senate tenure. Look, we know during the Bill Clinton presidency, Sandy Berger, the national security advisor, literally took classified documents and stuck them into his underwear to smuggle them out of a secure skiff. It raises an obvious question: where did these documents come from? And Biden so far has refused to answer them.
His underwear.
And Karine Jean-Pierre, it has been painful to watch as what she says every day is proven false literally the next day.
Yeah, it is very painful, Ted. And it's a good question. I do like the Sandy Berger analogy. We talked about that one yesterday a little bit, where Sandy walked out of there with documents in his pants and in his socks. He shoved them in there. Was that what Joe Biden was doing? Did anybody check his diapers over the last 25 years? Nobody knows. But Ted Cruz also has another point on this where he's saying extend the search. Maybe we need to dive in further and figure out what else Biden has left behind.
Number one, I think it was clearly a cover-up. They claim they discovered this on November 2nd. That was a week before the election. And the Biden White House covered it up. The Department of Justice covered it up. The FBI covered it up. When it comes to Donald Trump, they leak like a sieve. They tell you everything they're doing, and yet miraculously they managed to keep this the most hidden state secret. I think it was right next to the nuclear codes, not to let anyone know that apparently Joe Biden leaves classified documents, practically in the glove compartment of his Corvette.
And in his diapers. And he's dead right about this, right? They have lied to us many times over this. Karine Jean-Pierre came out and gave us press briefings when the White House knew about December 20th documents that had been found, 2 batches. They only told us about 1 batch. They also got a question directly from the press saying, has the search been completed, more or less? And she said, yeah, it's done. We're not going to find anything else. They found batches 3 and 4 after that. We learned also that the day of the appointment of special counsel, there was the 3rd batch of documents that was found. We heard not from the White House, we heard from the Washington Post that had some anonymous sources somewhere that the Department of Justice, through Merrick Garland, which is in Biden's cabinet, sent a letter from John Lausch over to Biden's personal lawyers after they found the first batch and said, stop searching for the documents. You don't have authorization or whatever the letter said to continue to search. Stop searching. Why did they find the 2nd batch then in December 20th when they got a letter in mid-November that said, stop it, because they were obstructing, or they had shredders, or they were doing something with burnt vehicles igniting spontaneously after the Secret Service used them. A lot of very interesting things going on here. And you can compare and contrast that. That is obstruction as far as I can tell. DOJ said, don't do something. We're investigating you. They did the thing and interfered directly with the investigation, literally. If they're going to charge Trump with obstruction for making a legal claim, right, for actually saying, yes, I have the documents, but they're mine, then they have to charge Biden with obstruction and his lawyers for directly interfering with an investigation when they got a letter that said don't. Now, if the Washington Post is wrong and that letter never went out, then we'll come back here and eat it. But they said specifically December 20th, second batch was found. We know that on record from Merrick Garland as well. Obstruction.
About everywhere he seems to go. I think, secondly, it's just a mess. It is a mess. It is incompetent. It is corrupt. That is an enormous political problem for the Biden White House. It's a political problem for the Biden DOJ, which I think wants to indict President Trump. And they now have an obvious double standard that is jumping off the page.
But they're going to try to separate it, charge Trump with obstruction only for being uncooperative, even though he had a proper legal claim, in my opinion, to retain those documents. And Joe Biden doesn't get charged at all because he was cooperative.
But the next steps, there are two big next steps.
What is
Number
it?
one, we need to finish examining what other classified documents
Yes.
Joe Biden has failed to keep secure. That
Yes.
means that the FBI needs to search. There are over 1,850 boxes of documents from Biden's tenure in the Senate that are at the University of Delaware. I do a podcast 3 times a week. My last podcast on Verdict with Ted Cruz does a...
Make sure you go subscribe to his podcast. He always drops it in these little segments here. He wants some more subscribers. You can't blame him. Got to shill your podcast. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and like this video wherever you're watching it.
Deep dive into this issue, walking through the legal issues, the vulnerabilities. I believe the FBI should search all of those 1,850 boxes of documents to determine if there are classified materials there. But additionally, I believe the FBI needs to search the residences of Hunter Biden and any business offices of Hunter Biden to determine if there are classified materials there. Because if these classified materials in particular implicate Burisma, Ukraine, Communist China, payments going to Hunter Biden or Joe Biden's brother or the Biden family, then this shifts from a political problem to a very serious problem of criminal liability and major crimes. And so the FBI needs to search the University of Delaware archives, and they need to search Hunter Biden's home and business addresses.
Great. I want helicopters. I want those dudes jumping out of the side of the helicopter on zip lines, crashing into the front lawn of Hunter Biden with all of his hookers lying all over the place. Would be a lot of fun to see. So Ted Cruz, I think, has some good ideas. And, you know, I didn't know that there were 100,000 plus boxes of materials over at the Delaware Center. Could you speculate about the number of classified materials in there? Probably 1 or 2 documents, maybe. So we might have another 5th batch in Rehoboth. We might have a 6th batch in the Delaware Senate records. Who knows where else these documents might turn up? It's just going to be the gift that keeps on giving for everybody else except Joe Biden. Now, we've also heard a lot from James Comer, big fan of his work. He is also on the Oversight Committee, and he's really helping, I think, Jim Jordan as sort of the deputy who's just firing off these letters and making all of these media appearances. He does a lot of these. And he is asked on this one about the Biden family and sort of about what Congress's take is going to be, especially because we're seeing some new emails come out, right? Some emails popped out that people are calling back to attention, including this one. Hunter Biden emailed to Kathy Chung, which was one of Biden's assistants, or I think interns or secretaries or legal person, right? Moving documents around. And an email said, Hunter Biden emailed to Kathy, actually work, quote, for me and with Eric, actually do actual work with Eric and Joan so that I can make everyone money, right? There's some interesting emails going back and forth.
Work for him and his business partners. The other things I can do with.
I'm there, Hunt. I'm going to go talk to your dad about the possibly other things I can do with him and stay on with him. Put in a good word for me, right? So Hunter is the bag man for Joe Biden. He is engaging in all of these deals, making big sums of money. Now he's selling his artist. He's an artist now, you know that. And Comer details how this all might connect itself together. Let's listen.
One of the emails said it all, where he's trying to get her to go work for his associate who was going to do all the work, but then Hunter was going to make everybody money. So the business was the Biden name.
That's the Corvette.
That's where Hunter and his uncle, that's the role they played. They did no work, but they got a cut because their last name was Biden. And part of what they did was introduce these people to their father. So we're very concerned about everyone that was involved in this influence peddling scheme. Now the documents have become front and center. And it's very concerning because were the document part of the influence they were peddling? I mean, that is something that every American should be concerned about. And that's where our investigation is headed right now. We know a lot of the people that were involved that had access to those documents. We're trying to get a list of everyone. That's why we've requested more information from the Secret Service.
Well, Congressman.
Good. We're looking forward to that. So the Secret Service, we'll see if they can assemble a sort of recreation of the various logs and put those together so we can see who may have had access to those. We certainly know Hunter Biden did. He used that address for many of his personal documents. I think he put it on his driver's license as well as submitted it, I think, for a loan application or something like that.
That until the last 48 hours, and now, especially since Vice President Pence found some documents, a lot of military members of Congress that have spent their careers in military before coming to Congress have said, we've always believed that the military overclassifies things. So one thing that I will agree with Lindsey Graham on, and I already had this conversation with Jamie Raskins, who's the ranking member on the Oversight Committee, we are eventually going to get together and try to come up with a bipartisan solution because there's a problem here. There's a problem with how documents leave the presidency and vice presidency and follow them into the private sector.
Do you think it's a procedural problem or do you think it's a personnel problem? There are some situations where the software works fine, but it's a user error, The code's not broken. System works fine, but there's a user error. Like, for example, if you have a skiff in a basement, as Ted Cruz described it for us, and there's all these checks and protocols you have to follow, I'm sure those protocols are pretty good, but I would imagine those protocols don't include Joe Biden shoving classified documents in his socks before he leaves.
There's a problem with how the National Archives does things. So we've got to address this situation. We may be overclassifying documents, but we also need to have an inventory of what's classified and have someone make sure before those documents leave the presidency or vice presidency that they're checked and double checked to make sure they're not classified.
And they're accounted for, right? That was the big takeaway that I had when we saw that letter from Deborah Stidel Wall. She said, in response to James Comer, she was responding to his letter. He said, I need to know if there's any outstanding documents out there. Okay, to use the library book analogy, he says, do you know how many overdue library books are still out there in Biden's residence? And she says, no, I have no idea. I can't even see what he checked out or the last time he was in the library. And so you go, okay, well, that's kind of a problem. Aren't you the national head librarian? Like, aren't you supposed to keep track of that stuff? And she said, well, it's not my fault. I don't know. So for some reason, though, she knew exactly what Donald Trump had, and they wanted to raid his house to get it all back. But with Joe, they didn't even know it was there. For some reason. But you heard Comer bring up this situation with Pence, right? And Pence, I think, is probably the most straight and narrow individual out there. He won't even go into another room with a woman without his wife, evidently, is the rumor. And he had some documents. So how does this stuff happen? And what's the distinction between the two? Elise Stefanik, who was in the running to lead the GOP, got asked that question.
In the case of Vice President Mike Pence,
all right, low audio on some of these C-SPAN clips. Let's boost it.
In the case of Vice President Mike Pence, he came forward and proactively reached out and is following the process. In the case of Joe Biden, he has had classified documents going back to his time in the Senate, where he started serving before I was born. So this is a long-standing national security threat, setting aside the very important fact that Hunter Biden also had access and used as his home address where those classified documents were improperly and illegally stored. This will be a part of the oversight agenda, and on the House Intelligence Committee, we absolutely want to make sure we have all of the facts. Well, let's highlight the difference here in what the consequences have been. You had the FBI raid Mar-a-Lago. You did not see any of that happen for President Joe Biden, who illegally did this. What also is different is President Trump, as president, has the right to declassify documents.
Biden
so
didn't.
The media should cover the fact that the FBI has been weaponized against President Trump and clearly has covered up for sitting President Joe Biden.
Absolutely right. So good for her. I think this might be a different clip. Let's listen.
Intel background. The documents, classified documents were found in Vice President Mike Pence's home. How
The facts are important.
Okay, so I think it's the same clip, but so that's Stefanik, who is also explaining the differences between Pence and Joe Biden. And again, right, if Joe Biden had done everything that Mike Pence did and alerted everybody about this, they may have lost the Senate. They may have lost the House of Representatives by a way bigger margin if we all found out about this before the midterms, don't know. But the cover-up is way worse than the crime, right? We were all here mocking the National Archives melting down over the Trump documents. It would have been basically the same thing, right? Who cares about the documents? It's all love letters with Kim Jong-un. These people are role-playing national security competent leaders. We all know they're not. So the point is, they don't even want to talk about these double standards. They're not even asking questions. When they do ask questions, the White House just shuts them down, as we've covered this entire week and the last 2 weeks, essentially. We're going to do it again because they're still stonewalling the media at every turn. Karine Jean-Pierre, White House press secretary who doesn't answer any questions for the press, started today with John Kirby, actually. We know that the United States is continuing to fund Ukraine, hundreds of billions of dollars now, endless, continual support, unwavering for all eternity. And John Kirby came out to explain this. Now, previously here, we've talked about Karine Jean-Pierre potentially being shown the door. We know Ron Klain is on his way out. She gave him a eulogy earlier on in this week. So could she be next? If Biden announces a run again, would Karine Jean-Pierre transition over to press secretary for the campaign? And could somebody else slot into her position? One rumored person is John Kirby. Now, we have heard from him previously. He was a spokesperson over at the Pentagon, and now he does more White House work. But he's actually a pretty competent individual in terms of being a good communicator. We're going to see that here. Now, he also, I believe, I don't want to presume anybody's gender or identity, but I believe he's a straight white male. So I don't think that works for the Biden White House because, as we know, a lot of their hiring decisions are based on people's pronouns, genders, orientation, identity, and all of those other things. Here is John Kirby, who's a little bit kind of, folksy. He's kind of fun and a little affable, whereas a lot of these other people just are not. Let's turn the volume back down before we nuke everybody's eardrums. Here is John Kirby, who's having a little bit of fun with the press. He comes out, he's talking about the tanks. Okay, World War whatever is coming up here soon. And Kirby is asked about the implications of the documents. What happens to our allies if they can't trust Americans to keep tabs on their security detail?
You work in national security. How concerned are you, and does the system need reform?
I'm going to defer most of the document questions to Karine. The only thing I'd say here is that you're welcome. Thank you.
Kind of fun, right? Kind of fun, kind of funny. He's deferring this over to Karine. Like, oh, okay. Everybody kind of laughs about that because they know this is not, this is not a good situation. So we have John Kirby, like he can handle the press a little bit better. Karine Jean-Pierre just feels like this is kind of a really difficult person to even interface with. But they asked another question, and this is John Kirby. This question came out from Peter Doocy. It's Doocy time, and Doocy asks John Kirby about the process of using a SCIF. How does it work, John? You've got some national security background. Help us out here.
John, how hard is it to walk out of a SCIF with classified material?
Everybody who goes into a SCIF knows what the requirements are to go in, and knows what the requirements are to go out. You can't bring.
Having a tough time on that one, though.
And you certainly can't leave with material unless that material is appropriately secured.
Gets a little bit tricky there when you start trying to dive into those details. And he did kind of slow down on some of that. It's like, all right, don't want to step in this at all because we know the standard line from the White House thus far has just been White House press stuff goes to the White House counsel's office. Anything from the DOJ goes over to the DOJ. Don't answer any questions. Kirby was feeling a little bit saucy out there. He was sort of kind of talking in generalities. We'll talk about Karine because she says the opposite of that here in a minute. We've also got clips from Biden. He's sending 31 Abrams tanks over to Ukraine to launch World War III for us, which is going to be fun. And we've got clips of him forgetting his own Secretary of Defense. But first, let's talk about nutrition. It's very important to be healthy these days. And one of the best ways to do that is by going over to fieldofgreens.com and eating your greens. Now, we'd all like to drop those leftover pandemic pounds, and we're all sick of those ads for fat loss and fad diets and weight loss pills. We've all been there and done that, right? They don't work. You know what does, though? Eating healthy fruits and vegetables every day. You do that, I'd imagine the weight falls off. You'll feel great. But vegetables, not a fan, I know. Fruits, a lot of work. Who has time to prepare all that stuff? That's why we'll talk about Field of Greens today. This is a science-backed formula. In Field of Greens, specific fruits and vegetables that you're not going to find in any other product. Proper nutrition reboots your metabolism. You burn calories faster. You lose weight a healthier way. In Field of Greens, it's the only brand backed by a better health promise. Yes, look, you're going to look and feel healthier. And the best feeling you're going to get is when you show up to your doctor's office and he says, whatever you're doing, my friend, keep it up. You look fabulous. And you can get started today. Go over to fieldofgreens.com or brickhousenutrition.com and get your Field of Greens superfood. You can use code Robert, save 15% off your first order. Fieldofgreens.com, 15% off using code Robert, and you'll be very green and you'll just be blossoming. You'll be blooming all over the place. And in fact, you'll be so blooming, it will look even something like this as well. Here is another sample of just how fortified you'll feel after you get your green superfood. Look at this. Absolutely out of control. It's true. I have to fix that every morning. That's how it grows every morning. I have to, it like takes 2 hours to get ready for this show. Yeah, it's really, really a good product. So try it out, my friends, over at fieldofgreens.com. And that outstanding meme came from our friend Paul Mino at Sleepy Dog Lee on Twitter. So thank you to Paul Mino for that one. All right, so let's go back over to the White House. So John Kirby is explaining the skiff. Questions come in for Karine Jean-Pierre. Is Biden ever going to talk about any of this? Is he going to speak to America about his theft of confidential documents, Karine?
The president had said he was going to talk to us about this soon. He did make brief comments last week, but does he have any plans to answer the questions that we've been posing to him?
No.
To perhaps hold a press conference so that we
No,
can
understand.
No, he's not going to talk.
Totally
He can
understand the
answer.
question.
Ever.
I don't have anything to preview right at this time on any opportunities for the president to address this. But as you all know, and I know questions were shouted earlier, there's many opportunities that you all have with him where he takes all of your questions, and he has over the past 2 weeks.
Answered questions.
No, I
about this.
understand.
We've been shouting.
No, he's answered. Actually, when he was in California, he took a question. When he was in Mexico City, he was asked it. He took a question. The day after that, no, but the day after that, he took a question. So I'm just saying that it's not that he hasn't addressed this at all. He has. I just don't have anything to preview on a potential press.
Nothing
press
further to
conference or
add, all
anything
being
like that,
referred
and an
over.
opportunity, that you all will have to hear from him directly. But again, he has been asked a question a couple of times, and he's answered it, and you all have heard from him on that.
All right, long story short, no, you're not going to hear the president talk about it. Why would the president talk about it when he is, in fact, the person who might be admitting to guilt if he talks about it, right? Like the last thing they want to do is have him talk about any of this. All right, we have one final clip from Karine here. This is a fun one. The media is literally asking her if Biden's going to take other documents out with him.
And Vice President Kamala Harris leave office, no classified documents will walk away with them to places they shouldn't be.
So I'm going to be very careful.
Can you promise
here.
us anything?
As you can imagine, what I can say is repeat what the president has said multiple times. He takes classified information. He takes classified documents very seriously. His team currently is fully cooperating with the legal procedure that is happening under the Department of Justice and also the special counsel. I'm just not going to go beyond that. I'm not going to predict or lay out anything that might happen in the future. What I can say is this is something that the president, this is a matter, an issue that the president takes very seriously.
Yeah, they'll probably fall out of his socks again. There is not much they can do. It's just going to be a never-ending routine. We're going to have endless amounts of documents coming out of Biden. Now, Biden gave a speech today, and he told us a little bit more about his plan to engage us in World War III, leading to global annihilation. And you'll notice that when he was speaking there behind the presidential podium, he brought with him his two, people who he doesn't even really know. This guy, as we know, is the Secretary of State, Antony Blinken. This fellow over here is Lloyd Austin. You remember him. He had like 37 face masks on. in addition to the face shield, in addition to the social distancing, in addition to the mandates for the entire U.S. military that they're all having to backpedal now. They're sending text messages out to the U.S. Navy saying, our COVID policies are reversed. Can you please come and join us now and fight for America, idiots? So he is in charge of a lot of these policies. He's leading the war. We've played many clips of him and Anthony and John Kirby on this channel about a year ago, almost a year ago in February when the invasion started. And they had no idea what they were doing. They're like, we're activating 3,500 troops to show our NATO allies, blah, blah, blah. And we think this is going to be a great deterrence to Russia. And then Russia just like said, oh, well, okay. Well, we have about 200,000 people on our side and you have about 10,000. So why don't we just come on in? Joe Biden is now going to continue the escalation, not going the way that many of us would hope, with a quiet, calm, negotiated settlement where we can all get back to our lives. Instead, it continues to escalate, and America is now sending 31 Abrams tanks over there. Let's listen to Joe explain it to us.
And today I'm announcing that the United States will be sending 31 Abrams tanks to Ukraine, the equivalent of 1 Ukrainian battalion. Secretary Austin has recommended this step because it will enhance the Ukraine's capacity to defend its territory and achieve its strategic objectives.
Now, there, he got that right because he read it from a teleprompter. And you'll notice that Austin acknowledged it. Okay, watch the little head nod. Yes, I'm in charge here.
Secretary Austin has recommended this step because it will enhance the Ukraine's capacity to defend its territory and achieve its strategic objectives. The Abrams tanks are the most capable tanks in the world. They're also extremely complex to operate and maintain. So we're also giving Ukraine the parts and equipment necessary to effectively sustain these tanks on the battlefield. And we'll begin to train the Ukrainian troops on these issues of sustainment, logistics, and maintenance as soon as possible. Delivering these tanks to the field is going to take time. Time that we'll use to make sure the Ukrainians are fully prepared to integrate the Abrams tanks into their defenses. We're also closely coordinated this announcement with our allies. The American contribution will be joined by an additional announcement, including that will be readily available and more easily integrated for use in the battlefield.
Gosh, it's so painful to listen to him. He can't even hardly read the teleprompter. All right, so you get the gist of it. Now, that's reading the teleprompter. Now, this is our president who's in charge of World War III with Lloyd Austin, okay, at his side with Anthony Blinken. These two people are going to lead us into World War III. Let's watch Joe Biden not even remember who's on our team.
The Secretary of State and the Secretary of the military behind me they've been deeply involved in this whole effort. Armored capability, as General Austin will tell you, has been critical.
Oh my gosh. Lloyd Austin is the Secretary of Defense. He's not the Secretary of the Military. He's also not the Secretary of State. And he's not the Speaker of the House. And he's also not that dude back there.
The military behind me they've been deeply of the military behind me
whatever.
They've
close.
Been deeply.
I mean, we know what he meant, I guess.
This whole effort. Armored capability, as General Austin will tell you, Speaker
of the House
has been critical.
Nope. Oh my gosh, that's our president. All right, so that's who's going to be leading us into battle as we continue to fight the Russians. Now, he didn't take any questions about this confidential document saga. The press really wants to talk to him. Can he speak at all about any of this? As usual, the president makes the beeline for the door, scoots on out of there, not taking any questions.
Sir, are the searches of your homes completed?
Mr. President, when is Jeff Zients starting as your next chief of staff?
Bye.
Will you search for Hobit?
3 document questions. Door slams behind him. Sorry, press.
Sir, are the
Not
searches
for
of your
you.
homes completed?
Mr. President, when is Jeff Zients starting as your next chief of staff?
Will you search for Hobit?
No. All right, see you guys. No questions there. Now, they also had another meeting at the White House. So Joe Biden sat down with Kamala and Lloyd Austin and some others in the White House. And actually, this was Chuck Schumer. They're also debating, in addition to funding Ukraine indefinitely and sending endless gobs of money, endless resources over there, they also, right? I mean, Look, they've been charging that credit card pretty hard. Okay, Ukraine. Yes. You want that too? Yes. Yes, I want it. I need it. Okay, buy it. Okay, sweetie, you can have it. All right, swipe it again. Another store? Yes, I need it. Okay, swipe it again. Another one? Yes. Okay, well, we love you. I mean, gosh, you are the one and only thing we care about in this world. So I guess here's more money. You need us to increase our debt limit now? Our credit limit? Like we got to spend more for your habit? Okay, I guess we have to. That's how much we love you. So in Congress, they're talking about raising our credit card limit because we need to give Ukraine more money, obviously. And the press wants to talk to them about this. In addition to this endless printing of money and spending money that we don't have, they want to know about these classified documents. And so after they got done talking about how to just increase the spending, the debt limit, like they always do every time this comes up, they were asking about the document. Biden, Kamala, and Schumer, they're all just yucking it up. They know that they're not answering any questions on this.
We'll talk to you later.
All right, thank you.
Look at Kamala. Look at Schumer. Kamala's yucking it up. She's kind of knowing. She's like, oh, let me get this water here. Yeah, let me get that water here. I'm going to get real parched here. I'm feeling a little bit parched here because I need to hydrate so I can take this guy out and take over the presidency. But then she decides against drinking the water. She says, no, actually, I decided no. But I feel safer now that it's closer to me. Got to pull it close just so I know it's mine. Yes, that's yours, Kamala. That's your water. Yes, nice and safe right there. Tuck it away. Now, Schumer over here is just yucking it up like a little boy on 8th grade school, school night or something. I don't know. School's canceled. Weird. What is he doing? It's a bunch of weirdos. All right. So these people are in charge of our government. All right. So that's what is happening there. Now, after they had their little powwow where they pretended like they're doing anything competent, they then come out and said, we have a good plan to spend more of your money. Here's Schumer.
We had a great and productive meeting with the president, and it was one of contrasts between us, our
Chuck.
party, the Democrats, and the Republicans. Democrats are unified. Republicans are in chaos. Democrats are...
Look at this fella back here, Aguilar. He's staring at him with he won't even take his eyes off the back of his head. What's he looking at?
Aiming to help working families. They want to help the very rich.
What are you looking at, Aguilar?
One of the things we want to do on the debt ceiling, say to the Republicans, show us your plan.
Stop spending. That's the plan. Stop spending money you don't have. Stop funding everything that we can't pay for.
They've passed rules, and they've made commitments to put bills on the floor by regular order. Well, let's see what their plan is. Let's see what their plan
90% cuts of the federal government across the board.
Security? Do they want to cut Medicaid?
Point one.
Do they want to cut veterans benefits? Do they want to cut police? Do they want to cut
food? Look at this eye contact.
What's your plan? We don't know if they can even put one together.
Good. It's good eye contact.
But we are unified in saying we are going to stand together.
Schumer probably had a talking to him. Don't you dare break your eye contact off the back of my head. If you even think about it, you're fired, buddy boy.
And help working families and not do the things that they want to do about the wealthy.
What do they want to do? Just fund the wealthy? What do they want to do? Fund the wealthy? All right. That's who's running things in our Congress. So very little updates from the White House. We know the Republicans are very unhappy about this. They're going to go hard after the Democrats. And hopefully they get those 100,000 boxes of documents so we can see if there's any other classified material in there. We will, of course, continue to follow the document saga. Thank you for joining us as we do. Thank you for subscribing wherever it is you're watching this. Thank you for leaving a like before you stick with us on the next segment. And we will see you on the next one.